think we're looking at one of the great mysteries of the 20th century.
After 15 years, we don't have any significant leads.
I used to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, wondering what happened to these paintings.
13 pieces of art valued at up to $300 million, including Rembrandt's The Storm on the Sea of Galilee, Degas' La Sortie du Passage, and Vermeer's The Concert. Masterpieces, the heart and soul of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum here in Boston until March 18, 1990, when they vanished in the middle of the night.
Questions and theories abound.
Stolen from the Gardner Museum.
It's the answers that prove elusive.
Boston was wrapped up in parades and parties in the hours leading up to the greatest art heist in history. It was, after all, St. Patrick's Day in this heavily Irish city. Perhaps the perfect distraction the thieves were banking on as they prepared to hit the museum. No one suspected anything. The sun set, the night grew late, and the time was right to strike, exactly 1:24 a.m. Two men dressed as Boston police officers approached the museum's side entrance.
And they knocked on the door and said that they received a call about a disturbance, and the security guard opens the door and they tie up the security guards.
While it's easy to look back and say, well, the guards shouldn't have let them in, but it is a believable way to get into a museum by having two guys dressed up as Boston cops responding to an alarm.
The two guards were bound and gagged and confined in the basement. The thieves, who brandished no weapons, were now free to roam. The museum had no external alarm system, and the guards had no chance to hit the panic button that would have alerted the real police. What they would do next was as odd as their entrance and would baffle not only authorities, but also private investigators.
Certainly over 100 cases.
Like Harold Smith, a retired art detective who had traveled the world hunting stolen pieces for Lloyd's of London and top American insurance companies. Obsessed with the heist, he volunteered his expertise.
Part of my longest gone.
Even as Smith struggled with his own personal battle against skin cancer, nagging questions kept him awake at night. Why did the thieves essentially destroy some of the priceless works they stole, like Rembrandt's Only Seascape?
The fact that they cut the paintings out baffles me. That's something I can't understand.
Smith also couldn't understand why the thieves broke a criminal's cardinal rule to get in and get out quickly. They spent nearly an hour and a half inside. From the first floor to the famous Dutch room on the second floor, a job, he says, that could have been done in 15 minutes.
They knew they were in no danger whatsoever staying in that museum.
And why did they ignore what's been voted Boston's most significant piece of art, Titian's Europa? Mistakes or strategic diversions? Boston Globe investigative reporter Stephen Kurtzgen says 15 years later, the mystery only deepens.
Was this a group of professional art thieves, or were they just people who were taking advantage of an opportunity and were pretty much low-level thieves who didn't know much about art and just were rushing through a place, grabbing as much as they can? And I think that question still is outstanding.
It's been a difficult and frustrating investigation. The fake cops also made off with the surveillance tapes, so these sketches are the only images of the criminals. There have been clues and tips. A $1 million reward was raised to $5 million, but all roads have led to a dead end.
We here always try and think of each room as a work of art.
At the museum, curator Alan Chong still finds it difficult to talk about the stolen art.
The missing paintings are a real tragic loss, but not just for this museum or for Boston, but really for the art world generally. And for me, the real tragedy is that a whole generation is being robbed of this experience.
The loss is amplified by the fact that these priceless pieces were not insured.
The reason being that Mrs. Gardner in her will left that nothing could be added to or subtracted from the collection, so the directors decided not to insure it.
And since nothing can be removed, these haunting empty frames remain behind. A museum and its visitors confronted daily by the art world's greatest loss.
It certainly changes the character of the room. One feels the missing pieces, one feels their absence very strongly.
But now, after 15 years, could we be a little closer to solving the case? Could two Boston career criminals have the answer? One claims he can get the art back in minutes. The other tells CNN hypnosis recently helped him remember an important clue.
It's a big secret. I just discovered it.
Is it believable?
Well, I think it's very credible.
I'm not in a position to dismiss anybody at this point in time.
Just down the street from Fenway Park, Boston's Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum is an intimate showcase of some of the finest works of art. But it's perhaps best known for what was stolen 15 years ago.
It's been like a death in a family. We need to get these back to be whole again.
It's an offense, it's a crime that I think the city would like to have solved as soon as possible.
The list of potential suspects is long. What about the two museum guards? An inside job?
I can tell you that the guards are no longer considered suspects at this point.
Or was it notorious fugitive Boston mobster James Whitey Bulger and his associates?
There's as many stories as there are probably days in a year in terms of what happened on March 18th, 1990.
But the stories and suspicions surrounding two Boston area convicted criminals remain in the headlines. First, Miles Connor, a notorious art thief, was serving a 15-year sentence for trafficking stolen antiques at the time of the Gardner Heist. Now, out on probation, he tells CNN he had once thought about robbing the Gardner, but scrapped the idea. He claims two former associates and a third man did the job.
One of the fellows came out to see me. I was in California at the time. He said, we've got these things, and we're going to use a section of what we've got to essentially bargain you out or bargain you to reduce sentence.
The artwork never surfaced. There was no bargain. The two former associates who said they had the goods died, one of a heart attack, the other murdered. When he was released, Connor, who says he stole for the love of the art and because he could, claims he began searching for the Gardner paintings. His former associates had always promised to leave behind information as a safeguard in case something happened to them. But Connor had a problem. He says a massive heart attack that almost cost him his life claimed a lot of his memory.
Are you saying that you may have been told where the artwork was, but you can't remember?
That's a distinct possibility.
Now, for the first time, Connor reveals to CNN he has recently undergone hypnosis and recovered a name. Perhaps the third man he was told took part in the heist.
Can you tell us the name of that person?
No, I can't, because it's it's a big secret.
Is it believable?
Well, I think it's very credible.
Tom Mashberg, an investigative reporter with the Boston Herald, has been relentlessly pursuing the Gardner case, which has often placed him in the company of not only Connor, but also another one of the ex-con's former associates, William Youngworth. 7 years after the heist, Youngworth took Mashberg to a secret warehouse in the Northeast and showed him what appeared to be one of the missing Rembrandts.
There's no question that at the time I felt I was looking at one of the real paintings.
Experts at the museum looked at photos of the painting and concluded it was a fake, but less certain, paint chips Mashberg received from Youngworth.
The paint chips were shown to be authentic paint chips from a Rembrandt type of painting.
But we don't know if those paint chips came from that painting.
That we don't know.
No additional clues surfaced, but Youngworth, who has a rap sheet of some 60 convictions, claims to know where the Gardner art is, can get it in 30 minutes, but wants guaranteed immunity from prosecution.
I can't say that there's nothing to their stories.
U.S. Attorney Michael Sullivan has been filtering all these claims for years.
We do have the ability to consider an immunity.
You're willing to deal with whoever that person is who has the artwork?
Oh, there's no question.
And in an exclusive on-camera appeal from the museum's director, an overture to an anonymous letter writer 11 years ago who seemed legitimate.
I'm particularly interested in hearing from that person who had, I think, a real concern about our getting the work back.
15 years have not dimmed the appeal of the Gardner mystery. It's been the subject of novels and films, like Stolen, a new documentary.
I, Isabella Stewart Gardner.
This story had the extra added bonus of having all these really interesting, intriguing elements.
The film was recently voted audience favorite at the Sarasota Film Festival.
I think people are really fascinated as to what happened, can the art be recovered.
Harold Smith, the art detective, was featured prominently in the documentary.
And that's why they're so unique.
He was optimistic.
At what point do you say, I don't think we're ever going to find this art?
No, this art is going to be found. I'm not going to give up.
Sadly, he won't be the one to find it. Not long after we spoke with him, Smith passed away. But museum officials and the FBI are equally determined. Despite dead ends and disappointments, there is still hope that the greatest art heist in history will one day be solved.